Justin, Karin, very nice to have you here. Welcome. Can you introduce yourselves to us, who you are and what winery you're representing?
My name is Karin Warnelius-Miller with Garden Creek Vineyards, alongside my husband Justin Miller. We are from Alexander Valley, Sonoma County in Northern California, and we own and operate and live on our property, producing wines and growing wine grapes.
So you're here today representing Garden Creek Vineyards and Warnelius-Miller.
Yeah.
We'll get to Warnelius-Miller a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about the history of Garden Creek Vineyards?
So my father, James Miller, purchased the land back in 1963 as a young 20-some-odd-year-old and fell in love with the property. This is before wine grapes were a thing in Alexander Valley. Met my mother, who is an immigrant from Sweden, in the mid-60s, and they started planting Cabernet Sauvignon on what we call our home ranch in 1969, and that was the beginning of Garden Creek. So we've been wine growers for over 50 years now, and that's kind of the beginning of our history in Sonoma County, Alexander Valley.
Karin, what is your history with Garden Creek Vineyards?
So I am an immigrant to the United States of America, and I came to this country in 1975. My dad had been an exchange student here when he was 18 as a farmer in Iowa, and then 6 months Iowa, 6 months California. Very attracted to California, although he did love Iowa as well. And he knew he wanted to come back with his family, so we came back in 1975 with the dream, as people do. And serendipitously, we met the Millers via a job posting at the Swedish consulate. We were in Lodi, California, which is very famous for Zinfandel and Cabernet, out in the valley in California. And anyhow, we got up to Sonoma County and we lived at Garden Creek Ranch. Our mothers became best friends. A lot happened in between. My family, in order to secure our citizenship, the quickest and dirtiest and best advice, not dirty, but direct, was to become an entrepreneur. And my dad has always been one from the beginning of his life, I would say. And we bought 20 acres of an old head-pruned Italian field blend off of Chianti Road in northern Alexander Valley, and 3 years later we started making wine. So I've been making and selling and stomping grapes and doing everything in the wine business since I was about 4 years old, and I've loved every aspect. And as a little girl, I knew I would not only marry a wine grape grower, but also a Swede. So my husband hit all the marks. So
50%.
Anyhow, we re-met. Our moms were best friends as we grew up, and we re-met in our 20s. And I moved on the ranch and moved in with Justin, and I was like, why are we not making wine on this property? So we've been together for 27 years now, but we've been making wine. This is our 27th vintage. So
Can you tell us a little bit about the focus of Garden Creek?
Well, Garden Creek's main focus is a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is what we call our Tesserae, and a Chardonnay, which is composed of our clonal selection at Garden Creek. I would say on the Tesserae it's more Bordeaux driven, and on the Chardonnay more kind of Burgundian driven style winemaking, with the intent to age for a very, very long time.
And that definition, I think people do refer to that because of the history and the classic character. But for us, there's a clean European representation, and I think it's also our upbringing, but we're firm believers in the typicity of the varietal. And that means showcasing the characteristic as they are, and not only of varietal, but of place. And that is, the exquisite soils that we lie under on our piece of property. Alexander Valley is a very large valley, and we are working now as a group and our wine growers to distinguish the different sub areas because of the fact that we have, even on our property, we're right on the Mayakama and eastern hillside slopes, and there's so many microclimates. You can feel them as you're walking our property, and all of that indicates differences that you are going to get within each of your different lots within your winemaking. And paying attention to that for us is crucial. I will say we're making much different wines than our parents ever made.
Yes.
You guys
Yeah.
do something, I would say, to me at least, quite unusual. You hold back your wines for a significant amount of time before releasing. Not exactly the best, financial decision, I would say, especially for a winery. We know winery is a very challenging business already. But what drove that sort of decision for you to make your wines or release your wines like that?
Integrity to our craft. We're firm believers to the fact that I wouldn't bring a 2-year-old to a funeral, and that's how we feel with our wines. You have to wait and be patient, and the way that we craft them is intentional in the way that we craft them to be aged for a long time. And to understand fine wines, it takes a long time for them to integrate and become seamless, and just like a famous musician playing for an orchestra, you can't think that in your first year of playing you can play on stage, but it takes, what do they say, 10,000 hours, and it's exactly the same with fine wine, where it takes time, and yeah, we're looked at as a little crazy, but it's the crazy ones that have a little more fun, I think, but also the wines, it just takes time for them to integrate and become just showstoppers. But it's also, the beauty in wine is when they are just luscious, and when they enter your senses, and you're just so pulled to them, and you cannot take your mind or your eyes or your mouth, for that matter, off of them, because they're so intriguing, and that's what we seek. And I think absolutely the passion between us and what we do, we love farming, and we are certainly known as the crazy hardworking couple that do not end until the sun goes down, but because we love what we do and we push it, and
Yeah, and the thought to be able to sit with our children at some point in time and drink a half a century old wine that Karin and I made together off our land, and vines that we planted and vines that their grandparents planted. Very special. But I think the intention needs to start with the beginning of the craft and the beginning of the vintage, of what you want to achieve. And we've stood on that since day one, and we love it.
And another piece of being able to achieve it, it's never just us, it's who we work with. And Justin's dad hired Fidel Gonzalez from Morelia, Mexico in 1964, before we even had wine grapes. And he knew, before he went into even wine growing, that relationship and treating people with care and giving them a safe place to live would bring commitment for generations. Today we're on 4th generation Gonzalez family, and we would do anything for them, and they would do anything for us. And a monumental moment for us when, they became brothers, real brothers, is when they helped us save our property in the 2019 fires that hit our property on October 23rd at 3:30 a.m. in the morning. It was
we wouldn't have a
we'll
winery
never forget.
standing today if it wasn't for them and their courage. All their own personal property burnt to the ground, they stood alongside Karin and I and saved everything that's involved with our business. All our case goods that are aging, barrels, whole facility. Yeah, incredible.
So you are farming around 100 acres in Alexander Valley, but you're only producing 2 wines, your Tesserae Cabernet Blend and your Chardonnay. That does not feel like a lot of wine coming out of such not like the largest property in the world, but quite a significant amount.
Yes and no. So we do have 100 acres, and we sell a good 65% today. Justin's dad has always been selling grapes, and up until 25 years ago, we've been holding back for our winery. It's in any good business, it's great to be diversified. but also with the winery, we're able to be very selective with the choices of the different clones conducive to soil type within the vineyard for our wines. And then Justin and I take great pride in, we are the winemaking team. We are equal in our winemaking. We are the winemakers, and Justin leads the boat, the ship on the wine growing, and he's exceptional at it. And I can say that as his wife, but also as a colleague and we're business partners. But we're very well respected for how we grow, and so yes, to answer your question, we are small, but it's a mighty small, I would have to say. So.
In terms of the winemaking, where does your reference point, or where does that sort of vision for what you want the wine to become, where does that come from? You started making wine in 2001. I understand you came directly out of UC Davis.
Yes.
I was 19 years old, I believe.
Yeah. I grew up in the vineyards as a young child. I mean, from the day I was born to where we are today, this amazing woman. So, you're young, you kind of take certain things for granted in life, but it was one of those things when I got of age, I just knew that's where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and I fell in love with this amazing woman, and next thing you know, let's take the family business to the next level and start vinifying some of this fruit and making some incredible wines.
And we also knew we wanted to stay focused. We make two vintages a year off the property. One is the Garden Creek Tesserae, which is very traditional left bank Bordeaux varietal blend, and then we've got our Chardonnay, which we've subnamed our clonal selection, estate clonal selection, and there's something really important to us about focus. And when we share our wines, we'll share a couple vintages of the same wine, and it tells a story like no other. And it tells a story not only of the years, the vintage years, but it also tells the story of the capability of the varietal and our land and us, the people. So it sounds small, but it's actually, in many ways, we're producing several wines every vintage, but then we blend them together, and it takes a lot of meticulous attention to detail and a lot of decision making and guidance, but also understanding. For us, crafting our wines is actually about going to the edge and pushing yourself, your knowledge, many ways your comfort, knowing the beauty that's on the other side, but you have to know how far you can take it, and that takes just knowledge, years of experience on your own land, which is, I think, one of our greatest assets, is this guy living on our land for as long as he has. I mean, he went away to boarding school for 4 years, but I don't know anyone else actually that's lived in one place all of his life, and he's 49 years old, so that's 45 years, and that's exquisite, and that's the knowledge that we have. And now I've been there for 27, and it's not that there's nothing simple about that. We travel the world, and we can go anywhere we want, but we choose to stay where we are because, one, it's so beautiful, and it's home, and it's where we have our roots. So
yeah, it's definitely a strong sense of place, and that's really
Yeah.
what we try and drive into our wines as well.
And then we have an incredible community. We love our neighbors, and we're incredibly involved with the fire department and the water district creation, and there's a lot that comes to living in a beautiful place and sustaining the life we live.
Protecting it, the
Yeah.
soils, the climate, everything.
Water.
It's special.
What has changed for you this past 25 years since you started making wine?
Gray hair.
You want to talk about hair?
What has changed? That's a great question. A lot has changed.
Yeah. We can focus on the wine side of it to help narrow the focus.
I think the biggest change for Karin and I is really understanding the soils and what we drive out of each individual soil. We're unique in the fact that we sit between two, not major faults, but pretty substantial fault lines. And within those two fault lines, we've got very, very old sedimentary seabed floor material that's been subducted and pushed up. And then, of course, we have very young volcanics, all in the same area and same space. So you can go from very white, chalky, volcanic, tough, compressed volcanic ash, all the way to old seabed floor. You think of red shale, high iron, very red, to a cobble, kind of what we call it, old sedimentary cobble, alluvium, where you can crack these stones in half and find old seashells on the inside. And I always try and explain to people and guests that have come to visit us and take our wines home, the power and the wines that we deliver and the wines that we make and craft and the longevity that they can withhold all comes from the soil and the climate and location. And that's just, you can't replace that anywhere else. It's unique to Garden Creek, it's unique to Karin and I, and that's really where we stand with that.
How has the community, the farming community there, changed over the years since when you first started and until now, where wine has become this sort of larger than life sort of presence?
It's certainly changed, but back in the 70s, we could ride on the back of the pickup trucks and put your head out of the side and let your hair be flying and no seat belts, and it was, there was less, no social media and instantaneous gratification of anything. The days were long, and of course we were kids, but Hillsburg itself has become an amazing, beautiful food and wine mecca, and of course that attracts investors and more money to the area, and it has changed a lot, and perhaps we don't like the fact that we can't get a parking spot as easily as we could before, but it's brought some amazing beauty to our area and incredibly talented people, and I think that's your question makes, we talk about it all the time, where we realize change is really important, and it also alludes to how we craft our wines, where the understanding of crafting our wines with great enthusiasm in our early 20s is different from as we approach or are in our 50s, and you can't ever sit still or think that things won't change. And certainly, perhaps, yes, we miss the fact that there was the hardware store on the square and pharmacy and candy store and
couple Greasy Spoon, diners,
J.C. Penney's and Sears Roebuck.
Oh, you're never seeing those again.
No,
but I think another important piece of that perspective in your question too is, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, you could make a station wagon full of wine, drive to San Francisco and sell it all in a day. Restaurants and wine shops were happy to see you show up and, oh yeah, give me a couple cases of that. And today it's a very different piece. It's much more competitive, but with that competitiveness has also elevated the quality and what we know and understand about wine grape growing in general, soil types, rootstocks, sign selection, row direction, canopy style, all the way back into the winemaking, the craft, how we age, the cooperage, and really trying to drive wines in a direction that will truly stand the test of time and showcase Sonoma County, Alexander Valley for decades to come.
There is a precariousness, though, to it, and it's what we all work together within the community to try to maintain, some of the simplicity still. Money can make things big and expensive and attract certain people, and it's important to have a balance. And it's, that's where, a balanced wine will give you joy, and a balance in life will give you joy. And it's something we work, I would say we're very thoughtful and cognizant of it as members of our community, and certainly as parents for our children. And but it's a beautiful place, and yeah, there's definitely been change, but so it is.
Warnelius-Miller, how did that come about? You guys are obviously, very dedicated Chardonnay and Cabernet farmers, but Warnelius-Miller is not those.
So we knew, I would say early 2000s that we wanted to kind of expand our little wine operation, vineyard operation, and buy some land in a completely different Appalachian climate area zone and experience something different, but also add to our legacy for our children and hopefully their grandchildren someday. So we started looking around up in Anderson Valley of Mendocino County and came across a beautiful piece of land up there for not too much money. Purchased that in 2006, and shortly after that actually found another piece of property that came to us that had originally been planted in 1971. And we had the opportunity to redevelop that vineyard and lease it, and that was kind of the inception of creating Warnelius-Miller, which is Karin's last name and my last name put together. But we knew that that brand was going to kind of envelop the cooler climate, so Pinot and hopefully a Chardonnay down the road will come from that area. But
So the concept too, he's the wine grower and I also do the marketing and sales, so my definition would be, the people and our names needed to go on the label, and it's always been Garden Creek, which is the name of the creek on our property, and that is, if you think, that is location, and that's very important. And knowing we were going to be planting this new vineyard, the Warnelius-Miller were our new world, where Garden Creek is our old world. And it's very dedicated to Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, traditional. And then if you think Warnelius-Miller, my family immigrated to this country, and Justin's family he's 7th generation Californian. So the idea too is for us with this Pinot Noir under Warnelius-Miller from Golden Fleece in Anderson Valley, it is the new world of our world. And so now today, all of our wine labels, we just had what we consider an evolution of our wine labels, and we've signed every single label. Each of them are numbered, and it just speaks to the authenticity behind what we're creating, and tying in our family's name into the labels. But Warnelius-Miller, we decided to do that long ago when we got married, was to combine our names.
Obviously, planting, growing, and making wines out of Pinot is very different from Cabernet and Chardonnay. What was the learning curve like? What was that transition like for you? Or is there a lot of things you could that translates over from Sonoma to Mendocino?
Well, first off, we've been growing grapes for a very long time, and I think the craft of making a fine Pinot, and growing up with a lot of colleagues that are in the Russian River area that basically only make Pinot, it has everything to do with the vineyard, and the winemaking is much more hands-off than, say, a Bordeaux program. A beautiful challenge. We loved it. Much more sensitivity to the winemaking, much more delicate handling of the fruit, the fermentations. It was a great challenge for both Karin and I, but also really letting the vineyard be what it is. Where I feel like in Bordeaux and Cabernet production, it's a little more muscle into it, a little more extraction. I think you can get away with a little bit more than with Pinot. You can't hide your errors in Pinot at all.
Although I will say a piece of it that was very important to us as vintners was to create a Pinot Noir that had a reflection of what we had already created with Garden Creek. And that again comes back to purity in place, but also there's a refinement in the muscularity of our wines, both in the Chardonnay as well as obviously the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Tesseray. And that beautiful piece of land had a little tagline from years ago, and it was the Little Big Vineyard on the Hill. And we knew it had the potential to have muscularity and depth and just a large roundness, which it does. It is by no means a sweet ballerina on the stage. it's got some oomph to it, and but also purity and gracefulness. Being Pinot producers has been a great challenge, but we do love it, and we're thrilled to share this new vintage. It's our second release on our Pinot. So.
You also put your Pinots back for a couple of years before releasing them.
Yes, we're firm believers, yes, in holding back the wines, which we spoke about, and 6 years on the Pinot. So it's a year in barrel, and just about 35% brand new, depending on the year, 35 to 40 brand new oak versus up to 4 years, 5 years, and
yeah, we age on gross lees. We stir for the first 6-7 months. So we get natural fining through that process and get some nice roundness into the wines. But I would say the wines could actually go a little bit longer pre-release. We do sell some of the grapes to a few other winemakers out there, and they're all seeing the same thing and absolutely blown away with the fruit. They did not believe Karin and I in the beginning that it was as dark and big as it was until we talked them into buying some. They're absolutely turning heads with it. So it's fun to have a few colleagues out there working with some of our golden fleece fruit alongside us.
What is your vision for Garden Creek and for Warnelius-Miller?
Boy.
Go big or go home. No. So our daughter, Elsa Warnelius-Miller, she's 19, and she's at university. Today's her last day as a freshman, finishing up some finals, but she is studying winemaking and wine growing and it's a very modern, dynamic department. It's coming to be a player in as far as her university, and she was also looking at UC Davis, but this school made more sense for her. And anyhow, Justin says it's our retirement package.
In the works.
Yeah. So we've always been ones to be very straightforward with our kids, and one of you will be taking over, so you decide. She's always been our farmer.
Yeah.
And
loves the dirt, loves
Yeah.
the vineyard, loves the winemaking. She's been part of it all since a little child, as well as our son too.
Yeah.
But I think to create a really strong old family legacy business that hopefully future generations of our family can take over and keep the focus, keep the passion going with the winery, and keep it small and intimate.
And the thing with properties, it's like nothing else, because his dad is still there. You can feel him with touching you in the shoulder at times, or scratching me with a bramble bush, because his parents are there, and memories of my parents there, and there's something really special about that, and there's no giving it up, and we'll do anything we can to keep it. So.
Yeah.